Well, good morning, everyone. Whoa. My name is Jessica Cantin. I'm the CEO of YWCA New Hampshire. Welcome to YWCA New Hampshire. We're so proud and pleased to be the first stop on the national tour for YWomenVote2020. We are a proud association of YWCA USA, the oldest women's organization in New Hampshire, and this year we're celebrating 100 years of dedicated service to women, children, and families in our community. 145 years ago, the women in our community came together to create a space for young immigrant women working in our mills here in Manchester to have pathways to leadership, enrichment, and education. It took them almost 45 years, but they opened the doors to this YWCA 100 years ago. We have been at the forefront of some of the most critical and pervasive issues facing women and girls in our community. For 42 years, we have provided comprehensive violence prevention and crisis services to victims and services in our community, survivors in our community, and we are a member program of the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. Over the last 3 years, we have worked with our community partners to create a space where our most vulnerable and marginalized communities in New Hampshire can be served. Much like the women 145 years ago, we are still fighting for important policy priorities and committed to solutions that address the need for more equitable systems in our community, workforce, and education systems. I am pleased to share that we are joined today by a dynamic panel of women whom I deeply respect and have had the pleasure of working alongside here in New Hampshire for a number of years. These women were asked to come and speak about their experiences and concerns on why women will and should vote in the 2020 election. This panel was chosen today as a result of our desire to highlight the accomplishments of women in our community that are contributing to issues that we should all care about. But these are the same women whose voice in a state like New Hampshire, who just recently in 2019 reached double digits in our minority rate of 10%, have to lift their voices a bit louder to be heard on the issues that matter most to women and girls of color. I want to also offer a special thank you to Senator Jean Shaheen, Congressman Chris Pappas, and Congresswoman Annie McLean Custer on sending representatives to join us today. I also want to give a shout out to Edify, who pulled together very last minute our AV to be able to televise this event and live stream it. So now on to the panel, which I am proud to announce we have our very own Alejandra Castillo, CEO of YWCA USA, which serves 2.3 million women and girls around the country with a network of over 200 associations. YWCA plays a dual role as both a social service provider and an advocate for reform and justice. Alejandra has over 2 decades of professional experience in Washington, D.C., having served in senior leadership in 2 presidential administrations. Given her policy, legal, and business expertise, she has worked in various public, private, and nonprofit settings. In 2014, Alejandra was appointed by the Obama administration to serve as the national director of the Minority Business Development Agency, becoming the first Hispanic American woman to lead that agency. In that role, she helped secure financing and capital in excess of $19 billion and created or retained over 33,000 jobs. Alejandra holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree from the State University of New York at Stony Brook in Economics and Political Science, a Master of Arts degree in Public Policy from the Lyndon Baines Johnson School of Public Affairs, University of Texas at Austin, and a Juris Doctorate from American University Washington College of Law. Alejandra is an active member in various civic and professional organizations and currently serves on several boards. Isn't it interesting being someone talking about you? She considers herself an example of the American dream and is proud to have raised 2 amazing nieces who she calls her daughters. A long-standing and committed resident of the District of Columbia, Alejandra is a supporter of the arts and an international traveler. Our panel includes Yasamin Safarzadeh, a native Angelino who has moved to Manchester, New Hampshire to pursue a Master of Fine Arts degree and begin a new life on the East Coast. A published poet and art educator, Yasamin has always been drawn to underserved populations because of her background as a first-generation American whose family escaped a country torn apart by revolution and coups. In Manchester, New Hampshire, Yasamin has been working for the Career Art Museum and YWCA to create accessibility to arts and career opportunities for underserved populations. She works to create safe spaces and events for the LGBTQ plus community, and she has been archiving and digitizing YWCA New Hampshire's rich history. She also works for the Dancing Lion, which happens to be the best chocolatier, so that she can bring this chocolate connoisseur's pleasure globally. Now on to Brenda Lett. Brenda Lett has a degree in psychology from the University of Dubuque and earned a master's degree in community mental health and community economic development from Southern New Hampshire University. She is an active member with the New Hampshire Black Women's Health Project as their current president. She is also the co-author of the book Race Between Us, an active leader who holds engaging community forums, workshops, and discussions on topics related to race equity, racism, and reparations for Black Americans. She is an active member of the NAACP and one of the creators of the Tapestry of Color Luncheon, which honors and celebrates women of color in New Hampshire. In 2019, she led a workshop series at the YWCA entitled Undoing Racism and was instrumental in the facilitation of a trip for youth in our state to attend the Reparations Conference in Detroit, Michigan. Now I would like to introduce Kile. So Kile Adumene is a working mother of 4 wonderful children. Originally from Nigeria, she came to the United States as a refugee in 1999. Her desire to work in the medical field came at 8 years of age when she watched her younger brother, born with a condition that required an extra support to breathe, struggle and die because the hospital did not have access to the type of medical equipment that would save his life. Since that day, she has been committed to saving lives and improving the health of patients and her community. She is an adjunct instructor at SNU, so am I, it's a fun fact, and previously coordinated the Equity Leaders Fellowship Program. She's received her BS in biology from the University of New Hampshire and master's in education from Merrimack College. She has completed the diversity and cultural competence training, community health worker training, and the leadership program in neurodevelopmental and related disabilities program. Last but not least, Christina D'Alessandro is joining us today as the New Hampshire Director of Moms Rising. This is a national organization that takes on the most critical issues facing women, mothers, and families by educating the public and mobilizing massive grassroots actions to bring the voices and real-world experiences of women and mothers straight to policy leader and corporations across all platforms. Moms Rising works on policy areas such as paid family medical leave, access to high-quality early learning, and breaking the preschool to prison pipeline and other positive family-friendly policies. Christina is a lifetime advocate. She's deeply committed to improving the lives of children and families, both in this country and overseas. In her prior work with Save the Children in London, she successfully worked to get children affected by HIV and AIDS into the national and international dialogue. She is a native to New Hampshire and resides on the seacoast with her beautiful family and her 2 sons and her husband. All right, so why do we share all that? I mean, it's really difficult to sometimes get through all of the information, but I wanted to highlight the accomplishments of these wonderful women, and I'm pleased to welcome Alejandra to the stage to begin our facilitated discussion.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I think this is on, or as they say in my household, buenos dias. I am delighted to be here. This is a beautiful New Hampshire morning. A little cold, but I'm glad that you all made it. And I want to thank you because I know we all have very busy lives. We all have conflicting priorities. But the mere fact that you made it to the YWCA gives us great pleasure and also a testament to the work that we do. Jessica, I am a huge fan of Jessica. She is a dynamic leader, someone who we can call at any moment and say, Jessica, we need you to testify before Congress or give a story that really uplifts the work that we do. And she jumps on a plane and goes to DC and really hits it out of the park. So I want to thank Jessica for her great leadership. Thank you. I want to give a moment just to invite you again. We are the YWCA, never to be confused. And the work that we do is truly monumental. We like to say that not all YWCAs have pools, but we help women when they feel like they're drowning. Whether you're in New Hampshire, whether you're in El Paso, Texas, Los Angeles, Wenatchee, Washington, Brooklyn, New York, Missoula, Montana, anywhere where you find a YWCA, you walk through the doors and you see change in action. This year, given it's 2020, it's a huge year for women. It's not just the centennial of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which gave some women the right to vote, and I say that because not all women got the right to vote. The centennial of women's suffrage. It's also the moment that our nation conducts the census. And I have to give a plug to the census. The census is what captures the data, where government makes decisions as to how we appropriate tax dollars and apportion power. And unfortunately, as it relates to women and communities of color, there is a consistent undercount, which we live with these numbers for 10 years. So I'm begging, I'm pleading, make sure that you encourage your neighbors, your family to fill out the census. And YWCA has a Why Women Count campaign, which is our census campaign. But let me go to why we're here today. We are here today to really highlight this survey. And this is our third national survey. We did one in 2012, one in 2018, and now one in 2020. And this survey is, I'm very proud of the work that the team at YWCA USA has done. This is a survey that oversamples, and I want you to understand, oversamples for women of color, Gen Zs, millennials, rural women. And I say that because not every survey that is cited in the news captures these voices. And the secret is, it costs more money. Think about it. Because of an economic issue, the voices of women of color and communities are not necessarily captured in our national surveys. So we wanted to make sure that we took an opportunity to capture the voices of women across America and to really tell us what's going on. Because we are the YWCA and we have 200 plus associations, we really have the finger on the pulse of what women want. And there have been some really impressive findings. And one of them is that women are united. So no matter what you hear, women are united on critical issues. And I'll tell you a few of them. One of them is community violence. Women are united that community violence, gun violence in our neighborhoods, in our schools, in our shopping malls is something of great concerns. And I'm not just talking about urban women. I'm talking about rural women as well. Women are united as it relates to gender violence, the issue that we still have a trouble speaking about. Gender violence is on the rise on so many levels. Women are united as it relates to the environment, concerns in terms of the environment. They're also concerned about the economy, pay equity, the fact that women are not on par with men, and the cumulative effects of that. So this survey is our launching pad. It helps us set the conversation, and that's why this panel is so important. But I also want to tell you that this survey gives new energy to the diverse voices of women who demand that our nation's leaders listen and take action to meet those needs. So it's not just a campaign. Whether you're on the school board, whether you're running for a county judge, whether you're running for state assembly, city council, Congress, or the presidency, we want our leaders to understand what are the issues that unite women, what are the issues that are paramount to women. So I'll also tell you that the YWCA is a 501c3 organization, and I will be repeating this several times because I don't want any confusion. The YWCA and the YWCA of New Hampshire are 501c3 organizations to federal rules governing 501c3 organizations. Specifically, we do not support or oppose any candidate for president. We have asked this morning that no political fundraising take place during today's event. We have provided an equal opportunity for all political candidates seeking the office of president in the 2020 election to participate in today's event. All campaigns were invited, those running for Democratic nominations and President Trump as Republican incumbent. We reached out twice to each campaign regarding our invitation and the individuals who will speak here today. And we will give equal time to each campaign in the next panel. But I'm going to repeat that again in the second panel, only because I want to make sure that there is no confusion as to why we're here today. So without further ado, this is an extraordinary panel of very, very strong women who have clear vision, women who have clarity in their opinions. So we want to make sure that we give not only the national context of what's happening, but let's bring it home. So we want to talk about what's happening and what are you hearing? What's really happening here in New Hampshire? And from your respective vantage points, what are the issues on women's mind that really defined life here in New Hampshire? So I'm going to start with Kile. You have a fascinating story. And I only say that because I'm very excited to hear about people's journey. And you have a very unique journey. I want you to, in the brief time that we have together, tell us a bit about that journey and tell us how that journey has helped you understand some of the issues that women in America are facing.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and thank you for having me. I'm loud enough, right? Yeah, so I'm excited about this forum. I grew up in a community where we always have time to talk. You have something on your mind, you know, you call a meeting and people gather to hear you out. So looking for having this privilege is exciting. So on the issue for women, so I came here in 1999 to the US. And I kind of migrated from Arlington, Virginia to Manchester, New Hampshire because I felt lost talking about the pool. You know, when you're swimming in there and you're drowning and no one else is rescuing you. And for someone like me who can't swim, I'm always afraid of the ocean. But I have found myself in different situations that feel like an ocean, that I'm swimming alone and I'm screaming and there's no rescuer around. I love New Hampshire. I've been here for over 20 years because it's a little small. I can really like tap on somebody's shoulder and like help me out more than what I felt when I was at Washington, D.C. But the things on the mind of women, like from my experience having come here, I've always been seeking for that community. I've been seeking for where are the people. You know, it's that common phrase that we use in the organic community and the African community. Where are the people? Because people lock their doors and they stay in and you feel so isolated. And I felt so isolated a lot of things. Coming here as a mother, first of all, was my first introduction to isolation. So I have to do this motherhood thing. My son is over 20 years now. I went on that journey by myself, no one around. I became homeless as a result of being alone and isolated here in the US on the soil where I would not have been homeless back in my hometown. I'll feel like a princess and a queen because I have a group of women around me during that journey. But in the USA, I was thrown into a shelter and no one even knew my name. And I was on the street, sleeping on the parking lot, sleeping at the bus stops. And the state wanted to take my child away because I could not produce any physical address that I guaranteed them that I would take my child to. I'm like, but where are you? Why can't you help me on this? Find me an address where I can take my son to, right? Or I have to work hard to produce that. So moving from that point, I'm always like, something has to change. As much as I want to grab my child and run away from this country, my child belongs here. My communities, we feel the same way. Like I was sharing earlier with Brenda. So now you feel so hard. You have to figure out how to swim yourself out of this wide open ocean that you don't even know the depth and wherever you're going to end up. So even though we came with men, so somehow I feel like we leave the men behind because now you're like running, saving lives, saving your own life, saving your family's life. And I believe that then, you know, still, you have to work for my life, prolong the life of my infant child, you know, by providing me that a suitable environment, that support system that allow me to function, maintain my healthy mental health. Be alive as a woman, as a mother, as a sister, as a community member, feeling like my voice is heard. So I hear a whole lot of that. And I also hear like we kind of what I did. Okay, I have to pick up 2 jobs. I have to find a daycare to put my child in. I have to swim out of that homelessness situation. And then I have to build a home. But then you are not qualified for no help. You're on your own. And if there's a help, I was introduced, so we can only offer you public housing in this location of the town. Like, I'm new here. I need to integrate. I need to see people. Where are the people? Don't put me in a box somewhere where you think I belong. I need my mind to be expanded. I turned that down. Then I'm on my own. If you don't accept what I offer you, then you are out there to fish for yourself. So I think there's policies in place to really help like women, in my experience, to allow us to make a choice of the kind of life we want to live, not being imposed upon and being thrown into a corner. This is where you belong, and this is how much I can help you with. And if you don't accept that, you're on your own. So we struggle not only packing up all these hours, menial jobs. If you don't have a degree, I have all my higher education in the United States. So you can imagine coming in without any bachelor degree, what kind of job I was allowed to have, right?
So Kile, I'm going to interrupt for a second because I want to come back in a minute, and I want to also offer a couple of things. One is the mission statement, the full mission statement of the YWCA is eliminating racism, empowering women, promoting peace, justice, freedom, and that last word, dignity, right? How do we make sure that women feel dignified? Because the struggles can really chip away on that. So I want to come back to that when we do our second round. But I want to bring in Jasmine because, first of all, you have an incredible resume and all the things that you do. I would love, Jasmine, if you can tell me, here at the YWCA of New Hampshire, you work specifically with underserved communities. What are the concerns and priorities that the women who come through the doors of the YWCA are really lifting up or telling you about?
Sure. So I just want to give credit. We have a crisis center that does a lot of work, and without the ladies upstairs, this building I don't think would be in existence today. So the work that they do is absolutely imperative. Downstairs, my supervisors and our CEO has given me complete and total freedom to create programs and workshops that I think also as a working class person in this community, women and men will benefit from. I think my first idea was a professional development class. Hygiene, researching the jargon, the terminology that the workplace that you want to work for uses. We have a voucher program for clothing. So we have a fabulous thrift store downstairs. We would take them shopping. We partnered with SNHU for this program. Resume building, formatting, laptops, like we provided all of this. And then finally, Courtney Perrin, who's fabulous, took us to SNHU where we sat with their Department of Career Services and they did mock interviews and talked to them about this is a really cool opportunity that as a kid from LA, I was never taken to UCLA, shown the campus, and shown its accessibility. And I think that was a really powerful moment for a lot of the young girls that we work with. Specifically regarding the LGBTQ plus community, we're creating these events that are safe spaces. So we have panel discussions, we have art workshops, we have a mass queer aid ball. So it's like an anti-Valentine's Day, anti-prom thing, but it's sort of like, this is your space, do with it as you will, dress like whatever you want. These are, again, as a kid growing up, I didn't have a space to go to where I felt comfortable. So we would hang out in like parking lots, afraid to go home, stuff like this. And I think those lead to some more difficult life choices that are harder to come out of later. Creative outlets, we've been working with the VA, their wing of LGBTQ+, and also just vets in general. So we've been going over there, teaching painting workshops. They've been coming here. We're gonna utilize our new industrial kitchen to teach some of our kids like nutrition classes. Also, they're gonna start coming and playing like basketball, or it's a version of basketball that includes like wheelchair accessibility, and it's a very interesting. So there's a lot of, I just really like this organization. I've never worked for any place that allows me to put colored and women first and create workshops specifically for that demographic. It's astounding.
And I thank you for that, because the other piece that YWCAs across the country are also being very focused on is centering women of color, but also looking at it through a trauma-informed lens, making sure that the work that we do, especially in the area of gender-based violence and other elements, you talked about veterans, the work that we do across the country, and I'm so happy to know that you're leading that effort here in New Hampshire. I want to pivot to Brenda, and Brenda and I had a very good conversation before this panel Would love to hear your particular perspective, Brenda, as you lead your organization and some of the issues that are central to your mission.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
First, I want to give honor to Sister Sandy Hicks, who is an ancestor now, who, if she wasn't, she would probably be here, so I want to give honor to her. Second, I want to recognize and honor Jessica. Jessica has done a fabulous job here at the YWCA. I've still been able to hold events here. And so I just want to start out by saying that. One of the things about Sandy Hicks is that she would tell you that she wore so many hats. And I guess I do as well. So I'm really talking to you today from a group called NCOBRA, which is the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. It was founded in 1987. We have 5 injury areas: peoplehood, economic development, health and wellness, criminal punishment, education. NCOBRA is committed to repair and heal our minds and bodies. So when we say reparations, reparations basically means repair. So historically, people of African descent have supported political campaigns to make America great. Unfortunately, as a people, we have yet to receive that kind of reciprocity. Not as individuals, as a people. Within the Democratic Party, people of African descent have supported Democratic candidates for at least the last 50 years. And as an African people, we've yet to receive much in return, even with our last president, who happened to be of African descent. It's technically no one's fault. It's everyone's fault. We are people, yet people of African descent, unfortunately, are not seen as people. So, in this country, you must speak up and speak out for what is right. Sometimes you can be isolated for that. Yeah, you can. And if you know there are injustices, we must show some commitment to do the right thing. Women of African descent voted 98% for Hillary Clinton. European women, 45% for Hillary Clinton. I'm of the mindset those women voted for their families, and they thought it would be better to have the current president. I'm of that mindset. But people of African descent have families as well. And so that's why I'm here to talk to you about H.R. 40 and Senate Bill 1083, which are the legislative bills that are being co-sponsored by Sheila Jackson Lee and Cory Booker. So currently we have 122 co-sponsors for that bill out of 435 legislators. Unfortunately, our 2 Congress people here are not co-sponsors. That would be Pappas, who I really like a lot, and Custer, who I don't really know that well. And then there is 16 co-sponsors for Senate Bill 1083. Again, our senators are not co-sponsors of that bill. So when you ask me the question, what can be done for people of African descent in particular, it's repair. Repair of our human spirit, repair of the dignity that we are often having to deal with, even in 2020.
And Brenda, I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
On so many levels. In addition to the many important things you said, you captured, we wear many hats as women.
Yeah, we
right?
do.
We're mothers, we're sisters, we're daughters, we're aunts. I mean, the list goes on. And yet, when we talk about some of the important legislative priorities, many of our issues are left behind. And I want to go to Christina, because recently we've seen action on the paid family and medical leave at the federal, state, and local level from both Democrats and Republicans, as well as in red, blue, and purple states. I'd love to hear from you, Christina. Can you tell us what the future holds for paid family leave here in New Hampshire.
Sure, absolutely. And first, I just want to thank my fellow panelists. It's really when you center your stories, and that's something we actively try to do as an organization, it's those stories and the continued telling of those stories that really moves policy and allows us to be sure that we're centering the people who really need to benefit from policy. So one thing about paid family and medical leave, we're in a really great place in terms of both nationally and in New Hampshire, where we are seeing movement. It is no longer a question of if this is good policy, it is a question of when we're going to see it instituted, and more critically, what it's going to look like. If there's one sort of key takeaway from my fellow panelists, it's that if we do not center people of color, and particularly women of color, as we think about this policy, and particularly because that means generally, I will say, unfortunately, a lot of lower wage workers fall on this, we risk creating a policy that does not help the vast majority of workers who don't have access to paid family and medical leave now. There are a number of bills and a number of things currently being discussed. One of the things we find now is I can go out really easily and ask, do you support paid family and medical leave? And I'm generally going to get a yes, and it is going to be from everyone. But that it is critical to say, when we're having that discussion, what do you mean by the policy that you support? Does this policy offer a level of wage replacement that is going to let those who are the lowest paid among us utilize that benefit? The minimum wage here is $7.25. Great, I'm going to say we're going to give you 60% of your wages. I don't know anyone who can live off $7.25 currently, but even more so, 60% of that? Yeah. That is a ridiculous policy decision. We also have a lot of evidence about the length of time that we need, the kinds of workers. Not everyone is working a full-time job. Are we covering those mainly younger workers who work in the gig economy? I'm taking and have multiple opportunities. Those people are as entitled to paid family and medical leave as anyone. We know it makes a difference. We know the health outcomes it translates to. And we know that centering families is good for families and it's good for businesses. So the key takeaway I want to leave here is what that policy looks like matters. And we need to be sure that policy is informed directly by the people it's affecting. We want to hear worker voices, business voices, and particularly within that, and I'm obviously speaking from Moms Rising perspective, and that we try to center moms, but it's really moms and people of color. Because if we create a policy that's going to benefit those women, or it's going to benefit us all, that's exactly where we need to be thinking.
So I want to make sure that we leave time for the audience, because I know this is an audience of incredible experience and people who have amazing opinions and perspectives. So I want to do a very quick round. And I apologize in advance because this was not in the briefing that we sent you. But I know you can think on your feet. Here's what I'm most challenged with. I'm most challenged with the fact that the Department of Labor just said that women have surpassed men in the workplace. Right? And yet, we continue to be having multiple jobs because we can't make ends meet. The pay equity issue continues to be something on the back burner. We talk about centering women of color, and yet it feels like we lose momentum just when we're about to cross the finish line on some of these issues. I want this panel to talk about how do we create synergy? The momentum that we're talking about, especially in this monumental year. What is it that you're envisioning in your respective roles as that mountaintop big item that we should all be galvanizing around? I know it's a big question, but let's think big and boldly, because our concern is how do we create that momentum that's really going to raise the voices of women in this election and beyond. So Mom Risings are doing incredible work. What is that big vision that we can all stand behind together as one?
I think the big vision really translates to we cannot leave anyone behind. We need to be looking at policies, and I think we try to get our member voices in to say, that policy is great, but does it include me? Because it's not just about the individual, it's about all those people that they represent. And unless we traditionally, I think, have had a way of making policy where we start off with everybody at the table. And then we say, we really want to get something over the finish line. I'm really sorry, but we're going to get to you next time. And that just is not right anymore. Because I look at paid family medical leave. It's the 27th anniversary of unpaid FMLA. The intention was always, it's going to move to a paid program. Now the discussion is, we like maternity and paternity leave. We may even like caregiving leave. But we're a little worried about how we're going to afford care for your own illness. We cannot make those those are false choices. And we cannot make those compromises. And that goes back to, we need to say a half-baked idea is not really advancing it for everyone. And I think that is, to me, the mindset we need to have, is really advancing together. And that means all the voices at the table. And that means making sure every time we're looking at those decisions, we are giving equal voice and saying, how does this work for you?
So Kile, I'd love to hear where's your given that journey you shared with us, where do you see women coming together as one voice to make sure that we are all taking care of each other?
The focus here, women of color, in my experience, doing 2 jobs, working so hard to keep my family together, pay all the bills that is needed. Don't get me out in the community. Don't get me around the table where decisions are being made. So how do we get folks? The work that I do with the women in my community is getting them out, come out. So how do we get them to the table, to hear them out? You can to hear them out. Women, we like a spectrum. We're all at different places, and our experiences is different. And our passion to be involved. I would tell you that even if I could barely survive and I'm okay with it, what is the future of my kids? If I'm not involved, if I don't know, how can I help them to become, a productive citizen? I have my son. He's actively involved now because I didn't just stay home. And to see that now I can relax now that, at least he gets it. He's finding his place in the community. It wasn't easy because then I lost my marriage as a result of I have to get out there. It's no, just stay here. Let's just make the money, keep low. I'm no, but the kids belong here. We have to pave the way for them. And then I'm fighting for the kids. I'm fighting for my family. So folks like me don't just show up to you. You have to come to them. So how do you make policies that will allow you, put money where money should be? Not just making decisions for me without knowing what I want. Come to me. Come to me. Don't wait for me to come to you.
Thank you for that. Brenda, I see you've been jotting down, so I know you have some wonderful perspective.
I do that so I can be as focused as I can. So my answer is clarity of purpose. I think that, we have to be really clear what our purpose is. And if we are a nation that believes in all people, then we need to kind of deal with people as people. I have an issue with that term people of color because that implies white is not a color. So for me, clarity of purpose, figuring out our language, how we can communicate better and understand that we're all in this together, I think, because it's work. It's work in your relationships, it's work at the job, it's work wherever you go. So it's not going to happen overnight. So let's work on clarity of purpose and let's work on our language so we can better communicate rather than talking about colors, which technically we are not.
Thank you for that reminder. And I'm always schooled that when we lump women of different backgrounds into one bucket, we lose the sensitivity to all the issues that impact women at various stages. So I appreciate that. And Jasmine, I would love to hear your perspective, especially as you work with LGBTQ+ and so many different Gen Zs and millennials, those that may not have the voice right now to be at the table, and yet we have to bring them.
So when I got the briefing for this panel discussion, I felt a little bit like pigeonholed because I sacrificed family and children for an education. Because that's a huge thing. It's one or the other. And I liberal arts program, so I went to very expensive schools with a lot of like very rich people, predominantly white, and so that was really difficult, sleeping on the floor of the studio in a cement, in the room, and sacrificing social life, any relationships, interpersonal or otherwise. So I did some research about, paid family leave is absolutely fabulous because that doesn't force mothers to choose whether they can be a mother or a student or educated in an academic setting. But also paid graduate leave, I think, would help a lot of, bachelor's degrees barely mean anything now. This is why I'm in a master's program. But that would help people in our team kind of infiltrate this big, amorphous government rule of educators, academic institutions. We need more people from marginalized positions in there. And paid graduate leave, I think, again, this is the first organization where I went away to my residency and I was freaking out because normally I'm going to get an eviction notice when I come back from residency. That's normal, that stress is there. But I came back and they were like, yeah, it was completely paid for. What? What is that? So, I think that's, but that's a choice that the CEO and supervisors take to not have way more pay than us on the ground level. And I mean, those are ethics, and I don't know how you, teach that to people.
And I appreciate definitely that you bring these issues up. Yeah, we as a nation have to really figure out how do we want to define who we are as people, and where are we going to take our country, particularly as we see the changing economics. So I want to first thank this panel for your amazing, amazing answers and participation. And I'm sure we can go on and on because there's so many issues that we haven't unveiled. But I do want to open it up to the audience. We can take one or two questions to any one of the panelists, if we're okay with that, right? This is not a shy audience. I know that for a fact. Yes, ma'am. Can you tell us your name, if you don't mind?
My name is Donna Blaze. Donna with a 1 N. You're not going to meet too many of me.
Okay.
Whenever I hear people everywhere, not just this panel, I know education is important. I worked in a school system for 9 years in an elementary inner city school setting. I am all for kids. I'm all for elder care. But I'm finding people that I meet, I have an 18-year-old grandson. I have 7 grandsons, but I have an 18-year-old that just got a full boat to UNH Manchester. He was 22 out of 528 kids. I have been saving for his college education since he was born. My first $50 went in when he was 1 month old. So I have his education paid for, and I don't have to use it now because he's flying. But I have six more kids that I have to think about. My top 4, the 4 oldest, are never going to go to any kind of college. They are all learning disability. So I'm looking at tech schools, all kinds of stuff like that. But I look at the debt that I have friends, I have acquaintances, I have relatives. Their kids have $70,000, $80,000 worth of debt, and they are not using their education at work. They have great jobs, I'm not saying, but I know we talk education, we need to talk education. My 4 oldest grandkids were lost. 2 of them never graduated from high school, and they went to school until they were 20. So the opportunity to keep learning is great, but do we really want to put so much money to make them put so much money. The parents put so much money, so much debt in an education that probably isn't going to make them any better in their work life.
Would anyone like to?
I'd love to. So the state actually has a lot of fabulous programs where they subsidize tech education, like CNC working, which this is a fabulous state because it has the lowest unemployment in the country. So there's a lot of debt-free schooling for people that want to build things with their hands. I just went on a tour for AmeriCorps. They have a program where they are teaching these kids tech-savvy stuff, and then they're placing them in the work environment. So I think also an excellent point, thinking outside of the box of what is the normal. Yeah, my sister came out of school with $180,000 in debt and is still working in a restaurant, 100%. These are other opportunities that we're providing people, volunteer internships. That professional development course that I was talking about is removing this mystery of education and saying you have to be in the workforce, you have to be volunteering, you have to be participating in your community in order to place yourself in a job. And I think kids are not having that conversation or a real conversation about employment realistically after obtaining an education.
So I will add to that, that has always been my area of focus. I came to the United States and I is amazed how much you own in debt to get an education. And so policymakers, if we really want to build this country, we need to put money into educating our people. I went to school as an adult, and as a mother, I went to school with 4 kids. I got my master's degree I own a house, I pay mortgage, full-time job overnight, getting my master's degree. It's not easy. There's not enough support out there financially to support me who wants to learn, to gain the knowledge that I need to help my kids. And even if I put so much money away for them, how much can I put away as a single mother for with a mortgage? Trying to help them be home and help them academically is not possible. So how can the United States of America, policymakers, how can we build our community so that we can ease that burden? It's okay to gain the education. The knowledge gain you cannot is a plus. But if they don't have so much debt, they can choose to work anywhere they want to. There's 2 things. You can work for your passion or you can work for the money. I work in the medical field where people choose to work there because they have debt. It's well paid, but they don't have passion. They cure people. So would they have chosen to work with low pay or just be a volunteer somewhere if they didn't feel like they are financially pressured? So how can we utilize those skills and help people and praise people, allow people to choose where they're passionate, where they're talented, not feeling pressured by the student debt that they have to carry?
I would say New Hampshire has the distinction of being one of the few states where childcare is actually less expensive for an infant and a toddler than our public university. That is only because our public university is so expensive. I hear a lot from mothers, young mothers, who have children and cannot balance the affordability of childcare, which is not only unaffordable but often inaccessible, correct, and this incredible burden of student loan debt.
We have time for one more question if in the back. Actually, I'll take both questions together and then we can answer it and we'll close the...
Hi, my name is Yemi. My question goes to, let me just ask everybody, because I'm here today because Kile invited me. And I said, let me just see what is going on at YMC. And I've been in this state for 10 years. And I'm hearing for the first time, YMC. So, how...
YW, no.
YW. Thank you for correcting me, because I'm here for the first time, and I was like, you have all these wonderful and cool program in places, and I don't know anything about it. And as she said, we swim. It's like you're trying to put your head above the water and you're swimming, and you're like, where are the resources out there? What and how did you intend to reach out to the community, especially people like me?
We've been working Manchester Proud, this initiative. They're developing a resource so all the schools are linked up, all the partnerships that are working with them are linked up. The proposal went in 2 nights ago, so we've, as Citywide, been working to create a platform that is accessible to people. You can follow us on hashtag YWCANH. We're very good at posting. I'll give you my card after this, so you can email me directly. But yeah, at Citywide, we've been working very hard to join everything together and create a an accessible platform for the community.
So thank you for that. And Kile, thank you for inviting your friend. And I'm glad that you're here, because that's the first step. There are lots of resources, and I think our job is to make sure that we make those known and much more accessible. But we're one entity. That's where the community as a whole comes together, whether it's the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit sector. So I want to thank you for being here.
And to that point too, if I have not taken the time to come out on my volunteer time, then I would not be aware of the opportunities out there to bring back to folks like Yami. Mm-hmm. Yami is one of the community members who are just lost somewhere, don't even know where to go, just the same place that I found myself years ago. So it coming to us, because you can have all resources you have available and justify them. But if you don't come to me, I don't know about them, and I'm not using them.
Yep. So last question. Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning. My name is Cindy Encarnacion. I am the culture-specific advocate here at the YWCA. Speaking on the issue of debt in New Hampshire, I recently was at a court and had the opportunity to speak with a New Hampshire attorney, and he was talking about some of the cases that he's had. He said one of the craziest things that he's actually sued someone over frequently is student lunch debt. He says to me, it's really crazy because these people would qualify for free or reduced lunch. And I'm hearing the conversation between the attorney and the other client saying, it's just as simple as filling out a form. I am also first generational. I know that my mom immigrated from the Dominican Republic. Oftentimes, I brought forms home. They were in English. They were not translated. She does not know what these forms say. And some of these kids, that's the only meal that they are guaranteed for that day. To hear that kids are being denied lunch, to hear that their parents are being sued. Manchester is a refugee city. We have multiple people from different cultures, and we do not offer forms that can easily be translated for these people. They do not understand things like free and reduced lunch exist. They have a hard enough time getting their students, their child, the help with their homework and things like that, because a lot of these people came here as a refugee and don't have formal education. So I think that issue needs to definitely be addressed, because we are working people, we are a refugee city, and it's not so black and white.
I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege to chime in to that question. First of all, thank you. I too am first generation. My parents are from the Dominican Republic as well. And I was the translator for my entire family. At age 7, I remember translating the eviction notice. I remember translating the Social Security letter for the neighbor. And it's a big burden, because you're telling adults bad news, sometimes news that you don't even know how to figure out. So there is a definite need to unburden some of the first generation's translators, because we take on the work that should be already, that should happen. And with regard to school luncheons, we're seeing that around the country. So I want to say 2 things. One is, let me go back to the census. We have to participate in the census, because again, a lot of the federal formulas, state and local formulas for assistance are based on the census. And if we don't fill out the census, our communities are left out from very much needed resources. And then the second thing is to be culturally specific and culturally sensitive, because we are, whether we want to say it or not, we are a nation of immigrants. Whether you came here in the 17th century or you came here just yesterday. And those are really important issues. So thank you for that.
And to add to that, I do have formal education, and I have 4 kids that I have to navigate, filling forms or going online. It's not an easy process. And lately I've been told, they're not qualified for anything. Bring all your income and then we'll figure it out. And I've been waiting. I've called a couple times, I've emails, and the process itself should be erased, pretty much. So when we know the population, even anyone, not even just the refugee or the immigrant, human beings in particular. I have 2 jobs or 4 jobs. I want to send my kid to school feeling like I belong to a community who are responsible for my kids. When they are out there, the system is set up to meet their needs there. When they are at home with me, I set up a system to meet their needs. But when we are kind of, okay, it's your fault, not your fault, it's the school fault, it's the mother's fault, we need to work on that system and just erase that so that our focus is on the child, not who to blame.
Brenda, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to share and remind some, not all people are immigrants here. There's a group of people that were brought here from someplace to do some work here for free. And I'm saying that those people and descendants of those people are still here. Not immigrants, not speaking any different kind of language, but speaking very clear language that says that we still are dealing with injustices that deals with the color or the melanin in our skin. It has nothing to do with our level of education, whether or not we're intelligent, but has something to do with the color of our skin. And we're treated a certain type of way because of that. If we can't talk about that, eliminating racism is not going to happen. We have to start from where we are. And so policies are fine, but it's not the policies. It's the practice. It's the practice. So you need the policy, but you got to have the practice. You got to have the action and the work that's going to take in order to deal with your mission of eliminating racism and empowering women.
I thank you for that. One more time, can we thank this wonderful panel? Greatly appreciate it. Jasmine, Christina, beautiful. So we're now going to pivot to the next portion of this gathering, which I want to...
I can pivot.
We're going to move into our second portion of our panel today. And once again, thank you to all the panelists. And we have invited, I'm going to read it again. The YWCA USA and the YWCA of New Hampshire are both 501c3 organizations, and in accordance to federal rules governing 501c3 organizations, we neither support nor oppose any candidate for public office, and specifically, we do not support or oppose any candidate for president. We have asked and asked again here this morning that no political fundraising take place during today's event. We have provided an equal opportunity for all political candidates seeking the office of president in the 2020 election to participate in today's event. All campaigns were invited, those running for Democratic nomination and President Trump as Republican incumbent. We reached out twice to each campaign regarding our invitation, and the individuals who will speak here today represent the campaigns that responded to participate. We will give equal time to each campaign representative, and at the 5-minute mark, I will step up to introduce the next speaker. Campaign representatives will speak in the order that they confirmed their participation. Audience members are welcome to speak directly with the campaign representatives at the conclusion of the formal program. So I want to start by introducing Diane Bemus Patrick, lawyer and former First Lady of the great state of Massachusetts, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, on behalf of the Deval Patrick campaign.
Thank you very much. Is this on? Yes. Thank you. I didn't know you were first, but we would take every opportunity
Thank
to
you.
come and talk
Thank
to
you
you
for
this
being here.
morning. Thank you for inviting me, and mostly not just because I want you to listen to me, but you've given me the opportunity to listen to you. And I think that's what governing is all about. I don't think that leadership should be about developing policies and then imposing them on people. I think leadership should be about talking to people, listening to people, and then creating those policies around what we've heard. And that's an important part of what we're doing here today is listening. Many of you may know Governor Patrick Deval, my husband, because he was the governor of a neighboring state. He served 2 terms. He was the first black governor elected in Massachusetts, only the second black person elected to the office of governor in the United States, and the only black person elected twice for 2 terms as governor. Somebody told me just the other day that if Deval is elected president, think about it, he will be the first president who is a descendant of slaves. I think that's pretty amazing. That's not the reason to vote for him. There are so many other reasons to vote for him, but I think it's something to take pause on. You may know Deval, but what you know of him is only a glimpse of what I, as his wife, know. And I can tell you that what I know of him is the epitome of empowering women. And I just want to tell you a very personal story. I won't take a long time. It's a long story, but I'll shorten it. When I first met Deval, he had just graduated from Harvard Law School. And I met him, and he had the world available to him. I met him, I was 3 years into practicing law at a big firm. And from the outside looking in, I was successful, I was self-confident, I was independent, I was a strong woman. But what he didn't know, and what almost no one in the world knew, not my parents, not my colleagues, not my law school friends, not my neighbors, my sister and 2 friends, that I was a battered woman. I was very broken. I lived in a marriage where for 7 years, where I had a husband who systematically isolated me, systematically humiliated me, systematically took away my self-confidence, so my esteem was as low could be. And it wasn't just that. When I began to fight back because I realized what was happening to me, he fought back, and it became physical. I was in a 7-year abusive marriage. I met Deval. He had no reason to want to befriend me. Indeed, my husband at the time told me if he ever saw me with a man, he would kill me and that person. Deval became a friend. Somehow I began to open up to him. Why? Because he cares about people. He cares about people who are the most vulnerable and the most needy. And I think I probably was the most vulnerable, the most in pain, and the most needy person he knew at the time. And he just drew out from me in ways that I don't know how he did, because as I said, I hadn't told anybody else what was going on in my life. And slowly but surely, he helped me find my voice again. He helped me understand that I was strong, that I was smart, that I was independent, and that this was a situation that I had to get out of. I was scared to death. I looked over my shoulder every day. And I told him to look over his shoulder too. But without Deval in my life, I wouldn't be a survivor today of sexual assault and domestic violence. 7 years of it. Talk about empowering women. You know, Deval came to that. Came to learn that what he did for me was not unique in his life. Deval is uniquely empathic. He uniquely cares about people in need. Deval grew up on the south side of Chicago with his mother and his sister and his grandparents, a 2-bedroom tenement. Spent most of his time growing up on welfare. He went to broken schools. He lived in often violent neighborhoods, and he spent a lot of time, like me, in pain, vulnerable, and needy, and worrying about the security of his family. But you know, he was one of the lucky ones. He was given an opportunity when he was in 6th grade by a 6th grade teacher who saw something in him to get a scholarship from an organization called A Better Chance, to leave that environment, get access to a good education. We all just talked about how important education is. Ultimately, to go to college, first person in his family to go to college and to go to law school. And then that's when I met him. And he has lived his entire life, devoted his entire life to helping people have the same, ensuring that people have the same opportunity for success, for a good education, to rise from poverty as he did. That has been a singular focus for him. And when he graduated from law school, not only did he save me, and save me he did, but with all of the opportunities available for him to do whatever, he decided to practice law at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. He worked on voting rights cases around the country. He worked on criminal justice. He worked on capital punishment cases. He then went on to be appointed by President Clinton to head up the U.S. Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. He became general counsel in 2 corporations. He ultimately became governor for 2 terms. He has, and as governor, and I will be done in 1 minute.
I just want to make sure I follow the rules because we're at 5 minutes. Yes.
His agenda was about empowering women. I'm just going to give you a few statistics. 50% of his senior management team were women. Of the 119 judicial appointments he made, 50-point-something% of them were women. And at the highest court levels, at our Supreme Judicial Court and our appeals court levels, 49% were women. He had women's initiatives. I'm going to stop because I'm going to get pulled away. But I'm going to tell you, he knows that empowering women helps everyone rise. It helps it has a positive impact on the economy and families everywhere. So as I say, thank you again. I really do hope that you'll take a look at Deval, his record, his leadership, because of all the candidates, they all have good ideas. Deval has results, and you can look at them. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And please know, I don't want to be ungracious.
I know.
I just want to make sure that I follow the rules in terms of the campaign. But thank you for sharing those thoughts. I'm so delighted to. We'll even that out. Yes, and we'll even it out for everyone. Thank you again, Diane, Patrick. Yes. So I want to introduce Evelyn Yang. She's a mother, advocate for families with children with disabilities, survivor of sexual assault, and implementation of the universal basic income, and board member for the Kulture City on behalf of the Andrew Yang campaign.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm going to watch my time. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's such an honor and privilege to be here to talk about the women's vote in 2020. And as a woman and the wife of a presidential candidate, this is obviously something that I care deeply about. In fact, improving the welfare of women is one of the main reasons that I let Andrew run for president. By now, I'm sure many of you know about Andrew's work, first as a business leader and then as a nonprofit founder and job creator. But you probably don't know much about my work. Andrew often tells people that while he's traveling the country running for president, I'm home with our 2 little boys, one of whom has autism. My job now is harder than anything that I had experienced working at companies, either large or small. And we all know that my job has immense value. But what does the market value my job at? 0. That's right. GDP would say that it's 0. Andrew's core message is humanity first, and his signature proposal is the freedom dividend, $1,000 a month for every American adult, otherwise known as a basic income. This is what Martin Luther King was fighting for as a basic civil right when he was assassinated. 1/3 of Americans today live in poverty. 70% are women and children. I'm talking about hunger and homelessness in the United States of America, where we have so much wealth. We have all grown way too comfortable with this reality. Poverty is racist, Poverty is sexist. Poverty preys on the LGBTQ community. The most direct way to end poverty is with a basic income. Women in our society have an extra burden. We are overwhelmingly the mothers and the caretakers. And we often sacrifice our time, our dreams, and our financial independence in service of our families. Just think about all of the single mothers, for example. The freedom dividend would start to recognize the uncompensated work of our mothers and our caregivers, as well as so many of the other types of uncompensated but important work that's done in this society. For example, the work of advocates and organizers, mentors and coaches, and even artists and creatives. And let's not forget the women who are trapped in abusive situations. $1,000 a month wouldn't solve all their problems, but it would be transformative. It would allow them to walk away with some income security as a start. We have an obligation to look after the most vulnerable and marginalized in our society. And yes, this often means women. Putting money in our hands so that we can decide how best to use it for ourselves and for our families is a critical first step in the right direction. Sometimes I get to read letters that Andrew gets on the campaign trail. Interestingly, most of these letters are from women. One woman's story in particular struck a chord. She's an entrepreneur, and she said that after hearing Andrew talk about how female entrepreneurs need more support, she had the courage to press charges against an investor who had sexually assaulted her. Her courage helped encourage mine. I recently came forward about sexual assault perpetrated by my doctor when I was pregnant with our first child. This, of course, was traumatic, but what happened next is perhaps even more disturbing. It turns out that this doctor had assaulted dozens and dozens of women during the course of his tenure. At one point, he was even arrested, but then allowed back to work the next day with his record quietly expunged. None of us suspected that he was a predator, except for the university hospital. But their interest was more in protecting their reputation, not in protecting their patients. They ultimately used their money and their influence to strike a deal with the DA's office behind closed doors. They basically bought him an early retirement. I'm telling you what happened to me, not for your sympathy, but because this is an all too common example of how our institutions are failing us at every turn. In my case, power and privilege won over people and doing the right thing. I happen to experience this betrayal in a very personal way, but this kind of thing happens to ordinary people every day. The abuse of power and privilege, and economic value winning over human value. We see this when we choose banks over homeowners, corporate polluters over our environment, the wealthy over the ordinary, and in the status quo, selling us down the river in all kinds of ways. We cannot be the victims in our own democracy. Andrew articulates what so many of us can feel and know to be true, that our markets, our government, and our institutions no longer serve us. They serve the almighty dollar and the corporate bottom lines. Our voice as women is more important than ever in 2020. There is so much at stake. As the mothers and warriors in our society, we have an obligation to speak up against what is eroding our collective conscience and help drag it into the light. This is the change that Andrew is fighting for. Andrew cares so much about supporting women, and I say this with so much sincerity as his wife. It's something that has always impressed me about him. He wants what we want: equal pay, paid family leave, reproductive freedom, access to quality health care and child care. and a world where women are encouraged and supported to lead. But he understands something that no other candidate is talking about, and this is so important, and I'll be brief. So much injustice against women boils down to economics. Who has the money? $1,000 a month is just a start. It's a foundation to build on. And then we can finally change this top-down dynamic that has been subjecting women to so much nonsense for far too long. So please use your voice this election cycle. If you don't know much about Andrew Yang, Google him. Watch him speak. He makes so much sense. And his policies will actually affect you, your lives, and the lives of your families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep. So thank you very much, Evelyn Yang. Greatly appreciate those words. I want to introduce Michelle Wu, a Boston City Council member on behalf of the Elizabeth Warren campaign. And we're going to 6 to 7 minutes, if you don't mind.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's an incredible honor to be here and to be back up in New Hampshire and in Manchester. I so appreciated the panel's remarks earlier, so I want to thank all of the leaders that were up there sharing your stories. I am a city councilor in Boston, and a few weeks ago, we had a very, very exciting inauguration where the first time in Boston's history, we swore in a city council, 13 members, majority women, majority people of color, majority progressive. And it's been a very remarkable and rather quick change in Boston politics. When I first ran in 2013, not too many years ago, I was fresh out of law school, and the person who encouraged me most was my professor, Elizabeth Warren. At that time, when I was running in Boston, I was seeking to double the number of women serving on the Boston City Council. So I was trying to join Ayanna Pressley, who herself was the first woman of color ever elected in Boston in 2009. So we've come a long way, but there's still much more to go. And in those moments, when I was on the campaign trail or thinking about how to manage things, it was always my mentor, Elizabeth, who was there. And so you've heard of her plans, you've heard a little bit of her story, but it's truly that her plans come from the heart. And one of the most important charges to her that I've experienced is understanding that you not only need the ideas and the policies on the books, but to make it happen, you need the right people at the table. You need women at the table. You need women of color at the table. And she has fought every single year, every month, both before being in office and since being in office, to make sure that she's mentoring the next generation of women leaders. And there's an incredible cohort of us who look up to her and are very grateful for that. I want to tell you a brief story about one of her plans that is not public, because it was one that I learned about in a phone call that she made to me. I was in my first year on the city council. I was 28 years old and had learned that I was the first sitting councilor to become pregnant while in office. And in asking around in City Hall, there was no policy for what would happen. There was no paid leave, everyone, as soon as you found out, would kind of start to save up your sick days and vacation days. And that was that in city government. And after my son was born, I was pretty overwhelmed, trying to learn the job of a first-year legislator, trying to be a mom. And when Elizabeth called one night and said, "How's it going?" I just lost it. I was in tears. I don't know how to balance everything. It's a lot. The baby's up all night, etc. And she said, "Take a deep breath." She had a plan for me. And you know that phrase that everyone always says to you if you're a new parent, when the baby sleeps, sleep, right? So she said, when the baby sleeps, and I thought, okay, she's going to say sleep. I know this. She said, when the baby sleeps, put aside the laundry. And I said, I've never heard that one before. And she said, your instinct is going to be that when little Blaze falls asleep, finally, you want to do something to put your life in order. You're going to try to do something that feels like you're in control and that is important, like straightening up or doing some laundry, whatever it is. But that kind of thing, someone else can help you with, or you can do when the baby's awake. So when the baby's sleeping, do what you can only do when he's sleeping, and do what only you can do. She said, so when he falls asleep, that is when you draft your legislation. That is when you reach out to the community. That's when you build your coalition. And it came from a place of such clarity of purpose and from her own lived experiences. She had been there as a young mom, trying to finish her education, trying to get her job and balance everything.
And all of her plans truly come from that place of wanting to make sure that we're all able to be in the fight in the way that we are uniquely able to contribute. So with her guidance, one of my very first ordinances on the Boston City Council was to pass paid parental leave for the city workers. And we did this as one of the first bits of momentum for the push in Massachusetts. This was before other cities had done it. This was before the state of Massachusetts had taken it up. And after we passed it, we saw agencies at the state level start to do it. We saw a push legislatively. It kind of came from the bottom and rose to the top. And now I am so excited that multiple candidates, but my candidate in particular, Senator Warren, has a concrete, specific plan for how all of these issues that working families need will be enacted into law and in practice. So she is fighting for 12 weeks of paid leave, whether it's for parents, for new parents, for birth or adoption, whether it's to take care of a family member, whether it's to take care of your own illness, whether it's to take care of caregiving issues related to military service. And it's every time I see her, she says, how's it going with the push for universal childcare? How's it going to make sure that Boston is leading the way? Because she's that partner who understands how all levels of government need to lift up working families. So I'm here just to say thank you all for your civic engagement. Thank you so much for leading the way and setting the tone for what our democracy is going to have to do this November. We are looking to you in New Hampshire, and we're so proud to be standing with you as we take back our democracy. And women are going to be the driving force behind that, particularly women of color. And can't wait to be back here many, many more times before the 11th. And we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. And I want to introduce Caroline McCarley, Mayor of Rochester, New Hampshire, on behalf of the Amy Klobuchar campaign.
Thank you. And I guess the first thing I feel an incredible need to say is that I want to thank the spouses of Deval and Andrew for those stories, because I had not heard them, and your own professionalism is incredible, but telling that kind of a personal story is so moving and so powerful, and I want to say thank you very much. Yeah. I've been debating what to say. I speak off the cuff a lot. A couple of people in this room know that. They've heard me over the years. Quick biography. 17 years on the Rochester School Board, because public education is indeed, at my heart, my passion, because it's what gives every one of our kids a chance, if we're doing it right, to make it. So 17 years in Rochester on a school board, that's probably enough to say. Did spend 3 terms in the state Senate during the Shaheen years. Ran a couple of presidential primaries, because you do that in New Hampshire. Got out for a little while and came back to be mayor of Rochester 2 terms ago, running for my 3rd term. Rochester is a low-income community. We look, quite frankly, a lot like Manchester, although we are not a revenue central place, so not quite the mixture, but in many ways a community very similar. So I was delighted to get back this morning and to have a chance to talk a little bit about Amy. Now, I'm not going to do I'll do very quickly. Amy is considered the most effective U.S. senator we have had in thousands of years. And that's because, and in the current era that it's been, the last 12, she believes that people have good ideas, you work with everyone to get those good ideas passed, and they make a difference for people. That has been what she has always been like, but she admits she got her start coming from a very working class family with a few issues along the way that she'll tell you about. But she got her start 24 hours after delivering her baby, Abigail, and being told, you're out of the hospital. Your daughter is in intensive care, but guess what? Your insurance is done, you're out. And she said, excuse me, that is how we have health insurance policies in this country? That's how we treat people. And she went out and said, we're going to fix that. We're going to change that. And since that point in time, that's what she's been doing, is an amazing prosecutor while in Minnesota, and getting to the Senate and saying, I want to see some change. And while it doesn't get all the write-ups, because there's so little that you feel like we do in the Senate, if you go back and look at her record, it is incredibly impressive. But I thought to myself, listening this morning to the panel, and I think it was something that Christina said, about all of us guys, all of our candidates would probably say yes to every single one of these questions. But the issue is, what's behind the yes? What's behind
what does your policy that you say yes to really mean? And the reason I ended up, and I had a few opportunities to endorse and get on other campaigns, I confess. You get to be mayor, everybody calls. And I realized that what I learned from my personal conversations with Amy is that at her core, she is incredibly smart and incredibly tough. Trump will be that's not even an issue. But she basically says, I've got a really good idea, but I want to hear what you've got to say. And I would give anything if Amy could have been here today, because this is the opportunity that she loves, to get to listen to people, to try to understand, and then say, okay, let's get this all into a new package. It looks a little different than my original idea, but maybe my first original idea wasn't the perfect idea. And sometimes I think our guys don't give us that feeling. You get a feeling that there's kind of only one idea, and we got to get there, and we got to get there today. Amy doesn't like being patient, but sometimes you have to be a little bit when you're working down in DC. And I believe if we have ever in our time needed someone who believes in what we all believe in and has an ability to say, I can listen to folks coming from a different place and I can make a difference. If we have ever needed that, we need it in 2021 when this guy is gone. So I encourage you to consider Amy and make sure everybody votes in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So once again, I want to thank everyone who is here this morning. I know there are lots of demands on your time, but I want to thank Jessica, because when you come to a YWCA, wherever you are around the country, among our 200 plus YWCAs, we touch 1,300 communities. We weave communities across this country. And there is no greater time than the one that we're living today to really have a fabric that comes together. And when you come to a YWCA, you feel like home. So I hope that you connect with all the representatives of the different campaigns. They will be here and they will engage you. And once again, Jessica, thank you for opening your doors to us.
Thank you for everyone for coming. This has been amazing. And thank you for coming out to visit, Alejandra.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day.